one of the things that I say in my talk is that every idea needs a chance. It needs an opportunity. And this is where so many of us get it wrong, because we reduce ourselves and the people around us to a single role. And we go, oh, I'm not creative, I'm just an accountant. Oh, I'm not creative, I'm just an investor. I'm just a CEO. I just fill out the order forms. Whatever. I just do this. And then we do that to other people too. We say, oh, that's so-and-so, they do the marketing. Oh, that's our email guy. Oh, that's our janitor. And we forget that that's actually, all of those people are human beings, which means that they've spent like decades of their life having experiences. And some of those experiences might be relevant to the thing that you're trying to do.
Welcome to Mitlin Money Mindset, your weekly dose of inspiration and insights to ensure you enjoy each step of your journey. Whether you're saving for the future, planning your next big adventure, or simply looking to add more joy to your life, you've come to the right place. Now, let's dive in.
I'm Larry Sprung, your host for the Mitlin Money Mindset and founder and wealth advisor of Mitlin Financial. Today's guest is Kyle Scheele, an extraordinary keynote speaker and referred to as the patron saint of crazy ideas. Kyle Scheele is known for his imaginative spirit, inspirational messages, and memorable storytelling. Through his keynotes and creative projects, he has inspired audiences worldwide to think bigger, dream bolder, and embrace their unique potential. From building a life-size cardboard Viking ship to creating viral campaigns, Kyle's crazy ideas have captured hearts and sparked positive change. His work reminds us that big dreams, even the ones that seem unconventional, can lead to incredible results when we approach them with courage and purpose. Kyle's message is about more than just ideas. It's about living life fully and fearlessly. Join us as we dive into Kyle Scheele's world of creativity, hear the stories behind some of his boldest projects, and learn how his approach can inspire you to bring your own crazy ideas to life. Well, I am super excited today to have Kyle Scheele with us. He's a keynote speaker and referred to as the patron saint of crazy ideas, and you'll be learning more about that today. So welcome to the show, Kyle.
Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So listen, we're going to talk a lot about what you're doing today and spend a great deal of time on that. But before we do, our listeners, a lot of them are entrepreneurs. I'm always fascinated by the entrepreneurial journey. So can you share with our listeners a little bit of background on how you got to where you are today and what that path looked like?
Yeah. It's interesting. I've seen this diagram before on the internet, and it's a line of like what we think our success journey will look like. And it's 1 point in the bottom left corner, 1 point to the top right. It just goes straight. And then it's like what the journey actually looks like. And it's kind of just all over the place, and it loops back on itself. And we like to, as humans, kind of organize that into a cohesive narrative. But the truth is my story's been all over the place. I started a t-shirt company when I was in high school, and out of the trunk of my car, and was selling shirts to kids at school. And then I ended up getting those shirts like distributed in Urban Outfitters all over the country. And I was a graphic designer for a while. And then about almost 15 years ago, I started in this professional speaking world. And I started as a youth speaker, and I would go around the country talking to high school and college kids about kindness and empathy and making the world a better place. And then the whole time I was doing that, I was also an artist on the side, and I was making projects and sort of chasing crazy ideas and doing Kickstarter things. And then within the last couple of years, I've become an accidental TikTok person. And then all of that kind of has just like solidified into this career as now a professional keynote speaker in the corporate world. And it feels like all of those different things that I was doing for the last 15 or 20 years finally now lined up in a way that makes sense. And I talk about creativity and innovation and where to get ideas and how to get better ideas out of yourself and your team.
Amazing. As you were describing that graphic, if you will, of expectations and reality, I remember we had a guest on the show, Zing Shaw, who talked about the corporate ladder, and that picture is like you're going up a straight ladder and whatnot. And she's like, it's really more like a jungle gym. Sometimes you go up a little higher, sometimes you go off to the right, you go down, you go up. It's not really a straight line path. So I hear you. And
absolutely.
And you're listen, you're living proof of that from the different areas and various things you've done in your life since you started working. So it's amazing. One of the things that I took away, full disclosure to our listeners, I saw you at the Carson Excel conference, and one thing that you really honed in on was that everyone, even me, who I don't think sometimes I am, but everyone is born with creativity. Why do you believe that?
I believe it because to me, it just seems like so obviously true. I think human beings are creative beings. If you watch a kid for 10 minutes and they will be creative. They're playing with blocks, they're playing with Legos, they're inventing stories with their dolls or their GI Joes, they're building worlds out of things. They're finding ways to use things that oftentimes are like, why would you do that, right? Like, why did you think that that's how that thing was going to be used? And that's because that's what we do. And you can follow that all the way through adults. I mean, like, it's funny that you say I'm not a creative person, but here we are creating a podcast. You've
Right.
created a business. The problem is what we do is we've decided as a society for some reason that, like, well, these things count as creative, and art counts as being creative, design and dance and theater and music, all that stuff is creative. But starting a business doesn't count as creative. Opening a spreadsheet, and filling that out doesn't count as creative. Creating a document, a contract, like, it's so funny to me because a lot of the people who would describe themselves as not creative, lawyers tell me that all the time. Oh, I'm not a creative person. I go, you got 3 parties who all hate each other to sign one document. That had to have involved some creativity.
Right.
And so I think that we talk ourselves out of why we're not creative, but the truth is all of us are, and we're doing it on a constant basis. And one of the reasons that I hone in on that so much and that I really hammer on that point is because if you think you're not creative, that's there's nowhere to go from there. But if you go, well, I am creative, I'm just not that good at it yet. Okay, well, we can work with that. We can get better at being creative. We can find ways to expand that creativity and to level up our skills. But if you just identify as, well, I'm not that, then I don't have anywhere to go from there.
Right. I mean, I agree with you. I think we're all creative, definitely, younger in life, and we kind of lose that. Do you think a lot of the feelings behind, hey, I'm not creative, is because we haven't really exercised that muscle for so long in many cases?
Yeah, and I think it's because at some point in our life, someone tells us either, oh, sorry, you're not creative, or they'll say something like, well, these people over here, there's a small group of people that get to be creative, and then the rest of us, we have to go do the real work. And so we're taught at some point to kind of hide those gifts. And I don't think they go away. I don't think that they, I think they can atrophy a little bit, but I think that they're still there. And I think it's a matter of uncovering that and realizing, oh, I still have that inside of me, and that is a core part of who I am. And yeah, I need to remember that, and I need to exercise that creativity a little bit more.
Yeah, that's great. So, as a guy myself, I've been stared at wearing a T-shirt that says, "What did you do today that brought you joy?" Because that's something we talk about very often, and I have it slapped right on the front of my shirts many times. Airports, I'm wearing them. I'd love if you could take a minute and share how T-shirts that you created in high school are a pivotal part of who you are, because I love that story.
When I was like 17, I used to, I loved vintage t-shirts. I loved t-shirt design. There was like a company that I followed that I just loved their shirts and stuff. And I got to this point in high school where it was my senior year of high school. I was student body president, so I was planning all of the student council stuff and fundraising and the dances, and we ran all the concession stands at games. And so I was like, my schedule was slammed with that, and then I had a full-time class schedule, and I'm studying to take the ACT, and I'm applying to colleges, and I'm trying to maintain some semblance of a social life. And at the same time, I needed some spending cash. My parents didn't have a ton of money. They weren't able to like just give me money for stuff. And so it was kind of like, hey, if you want to buy something, figure out a way to get that money. And I looked at my schedule. I'm like, I don't really have time to get a job. Like I have too much stuff on my plate. And I even applied to several jobs, and they were like, bro, you have like 3 scattered hours a week to do stuff. And it's different every week. Like, you're not an ideal employee. And so I decided, for some reason, I was like, I'm going to start a t-shirt company. And I had a friend who had Adobe Illustrator on his computer, and I borrowed his laptop, and I just started messing around. And the first t-shirt I ever designed, it was so dumb, and it had like this really poorly drawn like old woman walking with a cane, and then it just said, osteoporosis is bad to the bone. And I printed that out in our school's computer lab, just like on a piece of paper. And because I couldn't even afford to like order the t-shirts and then sell them, I had to pre-sell the t-shirts so I could pay the screen printer. And so I just started going table to table in the lunchroom, asking people if they wanted to buy t-shirts. And somehow people were like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And they just gave me money. And I had enough money to meet the local screen printing shop's MOQ, minimum order quantity. I didn't even know what those letters stood for. I had to Google them. And then I just like that, I made a tiny little bit of money off of that. And something inside me was like, don't keep this, like take that money and reinvest it into the business. And so I just like, I was able to order the next batch of shirts and the next batch of shirts. And they were all really stupid shirts. They like, one of them said, "Friends don't let friends watch Friends." This was during the time when Friends was a very popular TV show. Name calling is for sissies, and Lyme disease ticks me off, and just really dumb stuff. But I would sell these t-shirts out of the trunk of my car. I'd sell them in the lunchroom. And then at one point I had this story where I get called down to the principal's office. And he basically was like, "Kyle, buddy, like I love the entrepreneurial spirit. I love the hustle, but dude, you can't be running a business on school grounds." And so my next question was, okay, where do school grounds end? And we kind of reached this little working agreement where I would sell the t-shirts to someone, and we would walk to the edge of the parking lot. We'd make sure the coast was clear. Then we would step into the street and swap the money for the t-shirt. And I have a quote in my talk that it's one of my slides, and it's a real quote that my principal told me. And he said, "As long as you don't get hit by a car, it's okay by me."
Oh my gosh!
And so that was kind of like this origin story of me going, "Oh, sometimes like a crazy idea is the idea that works." And then I graduate high school, and I'm like, everyone's saying, "Congratulations, this big moment in your life." And I'm thinking, I just lost access to my whole customer base. That's how I was selling all my t-shirts. And so I decided to like pitch to retail, and I ended up taking them to Urban Outfitters, and we became like internationally distributed, and it was this whole thing. And I mean, I was 18 years old. I was just old enough to sign the contract with Urban Outfitters when I signed it. And so I think that was kind of the beginning of me realizing, there's something here about chasing a crazy idea.
Amazing. Now, was the suitcase story, was that the one that led to Urban Outfitters?
Yeah, so I had seen, like in my mind, Urban Outfitters was the mecca of teen retail. This is like where all the coolest kids bought their clothes. Full disclosure, I'd never actually been inside of an Urban Outfitters before. Like the nearest one was 4 hours away, but I'd seen their website and I got their catalog in the mail, and I was like, this is it. This is where I need to be. The problem was Urban Outfitters didn't really share my excitement about this idea. I found their corporate headquarters there in Philadelphia, and I found their number online somewhere. And I called it, and this woman says, "Urban Outfitters, how may I direct your call?" And in talking with her, I'm like, "Can I speak with someone in your buying department?" And she basically says, "No, like it's kind of a don't call us, we'll call you thing. And if you don't have a contact here, I can't page you through because like we're very, protective of their time." And so then I said, "Well, how about I'll just send them to you guys? Like just give me your address, I'll send the shirts to you." And she said, "Sorry, we don't accept unsolicited packages." And so I kind of like, I was like, man, I had this idea, I had this dream, I had this goal, and now it's not going to happen. And I was about to give up on that idea. And then something inside of me was just like, they say they don't accept unsolicited packages, but like if the package is cool, they're going to open it. Like who's not going to open a cool package? And so I just had this hunch, and I thought, you know what, this is like my Hail Mary shot. And so I got this old suitcase, and it was this cool vintage looking like orange or yellowish cool vintage thing with stripes on it. And I reupholstered the whole inside because it was all ratty inside. I reupholstered it in this cool vintage fabric. And then I took all of my best-selling t-shirts and put them inside so that the designs faced up when you open the suitcase. And then I put like an old pair of dress shoes on one side. It was like the traveling salesman, schlepping his t-shirts from town to town. And then on top of it was this folded pair of vintage corduroy Levi's. But when you picked up the pants, it actually opened up, and I had cut and sewn them into a book. And inside was like our whole catalog with all of our designs and our pricing and contact information and the company story and all this stuff. And then I just like shipped this thing off to Philadelphia, and they ended up calling me a week later. And the guy's like, "Hey, we'd love to carry these t-shirts." And they ended up being distributed all over the US. And then they also had one store in Toronto at the time. And so I joked that was the store that allowed me to tell girls at college parties that I was an international fashion designer.
There you go.
That was one, just again, another story of nobody would think that would be a good idea or that would have any chance of working. But I gave it a shot, and that was oftentimes it's those big crazy moonshots that on the other side of that is something pretty magical.
Yeah, I think, just the combination of the creativity of that whole idea is phenomenal. And then that no quit attitude, right? You basically call them, no, 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 we don't do this, we don't do that, basically telling you no at every tilt. And you're like, well, listen, I'm going to use the creativity. I'm going to still, even though they're saying no, maybe I could turn that into a yes, because I think this would be a good fit for us and for them. And you did it, because I think a lot of people, even if they had the creativity to come up with the idea, may never have executed and actually sent it.
Yeah, yeah, and I think one of the things that I always tell people is I think that the biggest superpower that I have is just persistence, and that's I just don't give up very easily, and I get discouraged like everyone else, I get down like everyone else, but I'm gonna pick myself back up and I'm gonna give it another shot, and I think that that's the key to so much of this is just don't give up, just stick in it one more day.
Yeah, such a great lesson for so many adult children across the board. So, why do you think that, you're definitely feeling like chasing these crazy ideas is such a great path for people? Why do you think that chasing these crazy ideas, whatever they are, whoever you are, whatever your crazy ideas are, is such a great path for people to take?
I don't think it always is necessarily what you have to do. One of the things that I tell people is listen, if conventional results are good enough for you, then conventional ideas will get you there. Like if the
Good
status quo
point.
is working for you, great. I would never tell anyone don't do something that's working. But I do think that if that's not satisfactory for you, and if you go, man, you know what I really need is crazy results. What I really need is outsized results. Like then you're going to have to try something that's a little bit crazy. And what I found in my own life is that all of the best stories in my life, all of the wildest, things that have happened to me, experiences, connections, relationships, all of those were on the other side of something that initially sounded insane. That sounded like this will never work. There's no possible way. And I think that what I've realized is that as human beings, we're just not very good judges of what is or is not possible. And so I think the only way to really find what the limits of possibility are for you or for your company or for your endeavor, whatever it is just to try and just to keep pushing that envelope. And eventually you'll realize, oh, you know what, that one was too big for me. But along the way you go, wow, I thought this was all that was possible. And it turns out so much more was possible for me.
Imagine a relationship where financial conversations don't feel stressful, but actually bring you joy. We've designed a guide to help you have positive, meaningful money conversations with your partner. This isn't just another budgeting tool, it's a roadmap for building trust and connection. So if you're ready to start a joyful money journey with your partner, go to mitlin.us/couplesjoy and download your free guide. Transform your financial future together starting today. Is there a crazy idea meter, so to speak, in terms of like approaching idea and saying, wait a minute, this thing is way too crazy to even think about trying. It's kind of off the wall. Or, this is a better, if you have two competing things, is there a way to say one's better than another, or it's really just, test and proof it out?
Yeah, I think you have to wrestle with, okay, well, what resources do we have? And there are some ideas where like, let's go to Mars. Well, that's probably off the table for most of us.
Right.
But I do think that sometimes there's an idea that we write off because it's maybe like 15, 20% or 100% bigger than an idea that we've chased in the past. And so we go, oh, it just must not be possible. And sometimes all you have to do is sit down and go, what would make it possible? Like, how difficult would it be? And then like really actually answer that question and then look at that and go, is that something I'm willing to do? Is that a swing that I'm willing to take? Tim Ferriss had this thing that I think it's called dream casting or something, where he goes, most people go, oh, I'd love to drive a Ferrari, but they never actually sit down. They've never researched what the MSRP is on a Ferrari, what the insurance is on a Ferrari, what would it actually take to get there? And yes, it's very expensive, but he said it's probably not as expensive as people think. And if that really was your goal, and you said, I've got this one life to live, you would break that number down and go, how do I make sure I have enough revenue to pay for that?
Yeah.
And we don't do that with our own ideas. We don't say, oh, I'd like to start a business. So many people go, oh, I'd love to write a book someday. And they never sit down and go, how much time do I need to write a book? How would I block out that time on my calendar? Like we just go, well, it's not possible. So I think that when you have competing ideas or when you have a big idea and you're like, is it too big? I think you have to take it seriously and sit down and look at it and say, what would it cost? And am I willing to pay that cost?
Yeah. And back to the Ferrari idea, many people haven't even sat in one to know if it was something that they would feel comfortable driving even, you know?
Oh, exactly. It's funny. I travel a ton with speaking, and I rent a lot of cars. And I'm not the tallest guy in the world. I have a complex about my height because I'm 6'2", but I'm the shortest guy in my family. My dad is
Oh
six
boy.
five. My brothers are
Okay.
6'4", and so I always don't think of myself as tall. But I remember one time I got in this sports car there because I have whatever the top tier status is with National. And so they just go, just pick any car that you want. And I was like, this is cool. It's this bright yellow sports car. And I sat in it and literally I could not sit up straight. I had to tilt my head at a 45-degree angle. I have a picture of it somewhere on my phone. And I said it to my wife and I'm like, this is why I'll never be able to drive a sports car. I'm like strictly a minivan SUV kind of guy because they've got the
Yeah.
headroom. And so you're right. I think that sometimes we don't think through, yeah, would I even want this thing? Like
Right.
it's this dream of it. And then you go, I don't even know if that the reality of what that life is like. Is that something I even want? Do I want to be worried every single time that I park my car? That's why I like having a car that's kind of not that nice because I don't care. Like it's not a stressor for me.
Yeah, good points. Good points. One of the things you talked about earlier was being a de facto or accidental TikTok star, if you will. And you talk about a time and a place, and then you almost yourself didn't take your own advice, but after encouragement from a friend who I believe said to you, "Kyle, you're funny," you finally leaned in and posted on TikTok. And it just took off. What did you learn from that experience?
Yeah, so the story that I tell is during the pandemic, I watched my entire business implode because I was a public speaker and there wasn't a lot of public anymore to speak to, and so I was just kind of scrolling on TikTok and sending videos to friends, and I would have friends that would send videos back or whatever, but I had this one friend named Andy, and Andy was always like, Kyle, like these videos that you're sending me are very funny, but you're also funny. Like, why aren't you posting on TikTok? And the excuse that I used was like, oh, I just missed the window. Like there had been this kind of window like a year or two before the pandemic. And it felt like TikTok had like just kind of come into the public consciousness. They were the cool new app and everybody was checking them out. They had this massive influx of users and they didn't have a commensurate influx of content creators. And what that meant was that like if you were creating content on TikTok at that time, you were almost guaranteed to get a viral video. Like I had a friend who was a social media expert and consulted with brands and stuff. And he said like, pretty much everyone is going to get a viral video on TikTok when you first start posting because they want you to get hooked, but two, they just need eyeballs. They need content to be able to feed to these eyeballs. And so, and that had been like a year or two before. And then now that had kind of like equalized out. Like more people had started creating, the influx of people was like slowing down. And so I was like, man, if only like I would have posted videos, but I missed the window of opportunity. And I used that as an excuse and I believed it for like 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, almost a year. And then one day I was like, what if I'm just scared? Like what if I'm just using that as an excuse because I'm a coward and I don't want to put myself out there? And finally, after all of that time of, oh, this wasn't the right time and I missed the window and all that, I had this thought of like, well, yeah, maybe that's true. Maybe that was the perfect time. But you know what, Kyle? Like people went viral yesterday. And people are going to go viral today and people are going to go viral tomorrow. So why couldn't I be one of those people? Like maybe that was the best time, but maybe now is a pretty good time. And so after all of that excuse making and months and, almost a year of that, like I finally posted on TikTok. And then on my third video that I ever posted, the third one, I went from having 17 followers to 1 million followers in 25 hours. Today I have 3 million followers on TikTok. It completely changed my life and opened up all these different doors of opportunity. And I almost didn't have that experience because I was convinced like, oh, this isn't the perfect time and the perfect place. And I think that we do that a lot. We talk ourselves out of something. We go, oh, like, if only I had this idea before I had kids or before I took this new promotion or I just opened this new branch or we just took on this new client or whatever, or we'll go, oh, we've got this election and then, oh, now the election's over and we should wait a little bit until that cools off. And then before you know it, like, oh, there's another election coming, like they just kind of keep happening. We go, oh, my idea doesn't have anything to do with interest rates, but
Life goes
interest
on.
rates are kind of high. And so we always convince ourselves this is not the right moment. And that's a trap because there's no such thing as the right moment. Like, this is a pretty good time. This is a pretty good place. And I always say you might look back in 10 years and be like, wow, that was the worst time I could have launched that idea. Or you might look back in 10 years and go, wow, that was the best time. The only thing I can tell you is you won't know until 10 years has gone by. But what I can be pretty confident in is saying that you won't go, oh, I wish I just waited longer. Like I haven't really met a lot of people in life who go, I just, I think the secret, the key to success is just dragging your feet a little bit longer. Like I think you're going to wish you had started earlier.
Yeah, it's like the old saying in terms of investing, right? The best time to have planted a tree was 20 years ago, and the next best time is today, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
just do it. So, how can business owners, right, if they have stakeholders as part of their business, employees, we call them stakeholders here, but how can business owners encourage their stakeholders to be more creative? Are there some tangible things they can be doing to stoke that creativity, if you will?
Absolutely. And I think they're very simple things. One of the things that I say in my talk is that every idea needs a chance, it needs an opportunity. And this is where so many of us get it wrong because we reduce ourselves and the people around us to a single role. And we go, oh, I'm not creative. I'm just an accountant. Oh, I'm not creative. I'm just an investor. I'm just a CEO. I just fill out the order forms. Whatever. I just do this. And then we do that to other people too. We say, oh, that's so-and-so. They do the marketing. Oh, that's our email guy. Oh, that's our janitor. And we forget that that's actually, all of those people are human beings, which means that they've spent like decades of their life having experiences. And some of those experiences might be relevant to the thing that you're trying to do. And so when it comes to how do we get ideas out of people, I think this is you just ask. You ask them for their ideas and you let them know that you value their input and their ideas. And sometimes there's some steps involved. One of the things that I tell leaders or I ask leaders, I say, do the people that you lead and the people that you work with, do they know two things about you? Do they know, number one, what are the problems that are keeping you up at night? What are the things that you're wrestling with? What are the things that you're worried about, short-term, medium-term, long-term? What are the things that you're seeing on the horizon as a leader that you're like, we've got to figure that out and I don't know how? Do they know that? And then second, equally important, do they know if I have an idea that could address one of those things, where do I put it? Who do I bring that to? What's the process for implementing ideas? How do we vet ideas? How do we see if it's any good? What's the process for criticizing an idea and getting input on it from other people and making it better and finding the weak spots? And what resources are available at this company for testing out an idea? And because if they don't know all of that, if they don't know the roadmap for the ideation process, and if they don't know what we're trying to ideate towards, then when they have an idea that could solve a problem for your business, it just goes away. It comes into their head and then it goes away because they don't know what to do with it. And so I think a lot of times we just have to give people a chance. I had this experience a couple of years ago. I was working with the CEO of this tech company, and he said, that they were kind of focused in this one area, this one industry. And then at a conference, their CTO, their chief technology officer, was talking to another CTO from another company, and that guy said, you know what, your tech is really interesting, and it does this one thing really well, but if you could also get it to do this other thing, if you could add this one other feature, we could really use it over in our industry and open up a lot of opportunities for you guys. And the guy was like, we could do that. So he goes back to his team, they iterate, they come back, and it opens up like multiple millions of dollars of annual recurring revenue for this company, like huge opportunity. The CEO of the company hears this story and he's like, okay, we were in industry A, and then now we learn about industry B, multiple millions of dollars of revenue. He goes, I have a hunch there's probably somewhere out there an industry C, if not a D, an E, an F. And so he goes to his team and he goes, guys, here's this story. Do we know other industries where our tech would work? And immediately this woman raises her hand and she's like, yeah, I just came from this other industry. Our stuff would work great there. We could just like relabel it. We don't even have to add anything. And he's like doing the math and he's like, that's also millions of dollars of revenue. And he goes, that's incredible. Like, that's such a great idea. Why didn't you tell me that before? You know what she said? She goes, well, you didn't ask. And like so many times, like and it might seem insane. You might go, yeah, she should have brought that up. No, that's not her job. Her job, she has a list of things that she's told to do every day, and she was doing them well. And she was getting good performance reviews, and she was getting bonuses. Everything, all signs pointed to she's doing everything you've asked her to do.
Model employee.
Yeah, you've never asked her, hey, you've never told the company, hey, also, in addition to that stuff, if you guys have ideas for other ways that this company could grow, man, we are all ears. Because the truth is, most companies aren't. Most companies are like, hey, do the thing. We put you in this slot, go do it. And so people just learn to go do that. But when you give people a chance, you'll find that they are often way more creative than you give them credit for. Most companies have like 3 people who are allowed and encouraged to have ideas. And that's why you only get a very small amount of ideas. If you want to get ideas, more ideas, ask more people.
I think those are great points, and I'm going to take a little bit of a turn here because as the owner of a wealth management firm that serves many authors, I have to ask or have you share about 99 Shades of Gray as a Kickstarter. This crazy idea that you did.
Yeah, so this was back in, I want to say 2012 maybe. So it was like when 50 Shades of Grey was very, very popular, flying off the shelves, but also being boycotted, super controversial book.
Yeah.
And I was an artist and a graphic designer, and I just made this stupid joke to one of my friends, and I was like, man, everyone's talking about 50 Shades of Grey, but I don't know if you know this, there's actually a lot more shades of gray than that. There's like so many more. And I said, even in the most like constrictive sense, there's this thing in the art world that's called grayscale. And grayscale it's literally a measurement of how much black pigment is in a shade of gray. So it goes from 0 to 100. 0 is white, 100 is black. And so that means that 1 through 99 are by definition shades of gray. And I was like, even the most constrictive scale has 99 different shades of gray, and they're only showing us 50. And I was like, what are they trying to hide? It's just a stupid joke that I made. And so I was like, I'm gonna publish my own book called 99 Shades of Gray. And so I put it on Kickstarter, and I reached out to all these publishers and book printers and stuff. And I was like, how much does it cost to print a book? And they all came back and said, oh, our minimum order is like $2,000, $3,000. And I was like, fellas, this is not a $3,000 joke. Like, somebody work with me here. And so finally I found a company that said, we'll do it for $600. And so I put up this Kickstarter to raise $600 to print this book. And I had no confidence, zero confidence that I was going to raise $600. I thought no one's going to give us, we probably will end this with having raised $0. Like, no one's going to buy this book. And I just thought it would be a funny story to tell. And I emailed some of my friends the day that the Kickstarter went live. And I was like, I know you guys are probably concerned about my mental, stability and thinking that you need to have an intervention of some kind. And I was like, I just need you to know, I also know that this is going to fail. I just think it'll be funny.
Right.
And I turned out I was totally wrong. I was right that it was a funny story to tell, but I was wrong about it failing. And we ended up raising almost $10,000. It was $9,944. And from like 400 different backers all over the world. We had to ship copies of this book to a dozen different countries. Like, it was just, it was completely outside of anything that I had ever dreamed was possible. And once again, I just, like, the window of possibility that I had envisioned was so much smaller than what this idea actually ended up doing.
Yeah, amazing. So funny. So listen, you've been doing 20 years of these crazy ideas, right? So what are a couple of major things that these 20 years have really taught you?
I think one thing is that it never really gets easier. It's always scary. Like, every time I have, like you said, 2 decades of experience, and most of my crazy ideas are kind of silly. They're kind of dumb. They're things that people can laugh at. And still, even having a reputation of having done that for so long, even having people who love me for that, for being the silly guy, for being ridiculous, I still, every time I'm about to launch a new idea, I go, oh, people are going to think I'm so stupid. No one's going to like this. It's not going to work. And so, like, it doesn't necessarily get easier. You just learn, hey, you know what? That's just a part of the process. I have to push past that. You talk to people who, work out every day. There are people that work out every single day, and every day they're like, I don't want to do it. Every day, like, I don't want to get out of bed. And you just realize, you know what? That's part of it. I'm going to push through this. So I think that's part of it. I also think that what I've learned is that you can't like hoard an idea. Sometimes we go, I got to wait exactly for the right time. And then what that does is, like, it just kind of like clogs the pipes of ideas. And so you're holding on so preciously to this one idea. But if you were to just do the best with that one, you have to trust that there will be more ideas that will come along the way. You just have to keep putting stuff out there. And then I think I've just learned about the power of collaboration, and that sometimes one of the things I tell leaders is that sometimes the reason that you haven't solved the problem is keeping you up at night is because you haven't asked the right person. And there are, people in your company that just have a different viewpoint on the problem because their day-to-day looks very different than yours. The person who answers all of the angry phone calls that never get to the CEO, they have a very different view of what the customer is experiencing and what their frustrations are than the CEO does, or than the product developer does, or than the accountant does. And you need all of those different viewpoints, because that's all that creativity is. It's just lining up things and going, hey, if you stand right here and line these two things up, it's kind of interesting. Like, we've never done that before. And you just might not have the viewpoint that other person has. And so asking for input, getting ideas from people, collaborating. I'd say that creativity is a team sport because life is a team sport. We have this myth in the American psyche of the self-made man or the self-made woman. And it's just that, it's a myth. We are meant to do this stuff together.
Yeah, great stuff. I love it. And definitely some great takeaways. So, listen, Kyle, we end each of our shows by asking our guests the same question because we are the Mitlin Money Mindset. We're all about joy here. And that is, what did you do today that brought you joy and put you in the right mindset for success?
Yeah, I saw that question and you sent it over, and it's interesting because I'll be honest with you, today did not start out great for me. It's been a little bit of a heavy week. I know this is going to get published a lot later, but this, when we're recording this, is right after the election. It's been a contentious election season. Even though the election is over now and the results decided, there's a lot of wounds and division in our country, and I think I'm just kind of feeling like, oh man, this feels really heavy, and this feels like yeah, just heavy and difficult, and a lot of difficult conversations and a lot of hurt feelings and things like that. And so that's kind of the week coming into this. And then this morning we sent my kids off to school. My wife took the kids and drove off to school. And then I was getting ready to head in towards to record this podcast. And I noticed that there was like a light on upstairs in our kids' bonus room. And I went up there and why does the TV look weird? And I realized that there was a crack in the TV, like the top inch and a half or so across. And this is a TV that we bought 6 months ago, brand new, gigantic TV. And it has this crack in the top of it. And it's like, it does the weird thing where you've got lines and stuff going on. Like, it's still usable. It's still fine. But I was like, what happened here? And so I texted my wife. I'm like, hey, did something happen to the TV? And she was like, oh, I forgot to tell you because I'd been out of town. One of my son's friends was over and they were roughhousing and something happened to the TV. So then I walk downstairs and I'm like, okay, it's fine, whatever. And then I go to start my truck, and my wife is like, why don't you buy yourself a new car? Like, you can afford a new car. But I have this truck that was my grandpa's truck. And then after he died, my dad bought it from the estate. And then I bought it from my dad. So it's like 3 generations in this truck.
Wow.
And I kind of like that it's just this old beater truck. And I forgot that in the winter, it does this thing every year when it starts to get cold, where sometimes it won't start. And when that happens, I've taken it in, they've looked at it, they're like, I don't know why it does this. And so you'll sit there and it'll just go, and it'll just turn over and turn over and turn over. And what you have to do is leave it alone for 10 minutes and come back and it'll start right up. And so I'm like, the TV's broken, this is a heavy election season, and then my car won't start. And I'm just like, all of this is like an hour ago. And then I set a timer on my phone for 10 minutes and I just took a walk. And I was like, you know what? I have time. I've got I was going to get here in plenty of time. So I was like, I've got 10 minutes to wait for my truck to start. It's no big deal. I live in the country. It was a beautiful morning. I grabbed this pair of binoculars that I have and I just go out walking through the woods. And I end up like sitting in this field and these deer are running. And it was just this beautiful morning. And then I walk back and truck starts right up. And as I'm driving, I remember this experience that I had when I was a teenager. When I was in high school, I dated this girl. And one day she let me drive her car and I wrecked her car. We were in this parking lot and it really kind of wasn't my fault, but there were these really short poles that you couldn't see from where we were. And I turned and one of them just crunches in the whole driver's side door. And I am shaking with fear. I'm like, I have to go tell this girl's dad that I wrecked her car. And so we drive back to her house and I walk inside and I'm like, Mr. Sparks, I'm so sorry. I hit a pole, and I'm telling him about it. And his first response, he just goes, are you okay? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, is she okay? I said, yeah, she's okay. We're okay. And I was like, and the car's drivable. And he's like, well, let's go take a look at it. And we walk out and look at it. And he just goes, hey, I'm just glad that you guys are all right. And he was not mad at all. He wasn't upset. And he said, Kyle, these are just things, and things are replaceable, but you're not. And I'm glad that you're okay. And it was an accident. Accidents happen. And I remember when that happened, I was like, I want to be like that. Like someday I'm going to be a dad and I want to be like this dad. And so I was thinking about all of that in relation to the TV and everything. And I thought, you know what, before my wife and I ever even had kids, we had talked about, we want our house to be a place where all of the kids come. Like we want this to be the cool spot for kids to hang out and for them to feel welcome here. And I was like, you know what? I have a teenage son. If I want teenage boys hanging out at my house, I have to understand that things are going to break. That's just a part of it. That's the cost of doing business in that world. It's like, you're going to have stuff break. And how I react and respond to that determines, do people feel welcome in my house? And so, I was like, you know what? It's fine. Like, that's it. If I can buy a new TV if I want, and I don't even need to. It still works. It's just, this will be a funny thing that the top inch of our TV doesn't work. And that's okay. And I realized that you can't prevent all the bad stuff that's going to happen, but you can shift your mindset around it. And I was able to then see both of those things, the truck not starting, that ended up being a gift. And the TV thing, it ended up being a gift of like, this is an opportunity. The truck was like, oh, I get to go take a walk for a little bit. I get to see deer running through a field in the morning. How many people get to start their day like that? And then, you know what? I get to actively make the choice. Hey, kids are welcome here. If you break my stuff, it's not that big of a deal. I'm in a place where I can pay for stuff. And so just like that shift of that mindset completely changed, I believe, how the rest of this entire day is going to go. Because I know that if I started in that negative space, it's not going to go well. But now I'm like, you know what? I've forgotten about that already. And it's just on to whatever's next.
Yeah, sounds like you have a joyful day ahead. So we wish you all the
Absolutely.
best. So Kyle, we're going to have all your information in the show notes, but if people want to learn more about you, connect with you, what's the easiest and the best place for them to do that?
Just anywhere on the internet, I'm at Kyle Scheele. That's KyleScheele. KyleScheele.com has all my projects and links, and I'll show up if you put those letters in somewhere. You'll find me.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. I hope you have a more joyful day from here on out, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you. You as well.
I want to thank Kyle Scheele for being a guest on the Mitlin Money Mindset. We all have big dreams and big ideas, especially when we were younger, and then they tend to fade away. Kyle inspires people everywhere to continue to think big and be creative. Big ideas yield big results, and one crazy idea could lead you down an amazingly joyful path that you may not have dreamed about previously. Kyle Scheele and all he is up to can be found across most social media platforms. All the contact information needed to find him can be found in the show notes.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Mitlin Money Mindset. Remember, it's not just about the money, it's finding joy in the journey and embracing the right mindset. If you love the show, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Don't forget to follow along for more tips and inspiration. Please visit the social links below to connect with Larry or his guests. Until next time, keep smiling, keep thriving, and remember to think about, what did you do today that brought you joy?
The opinions voiced in the Mitlin Money Mindset show with Larry Sprung are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. No strategy ensures success or protects against loss. To determine what may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, financial or tax advisor prior to investing. Investment advisory services offered through CWM LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Guests on the Mitlin Money Mindset show are not affiliated with CWM LLC.